June 4, 1996, Lagos, Nigeria. A woman is sitting in the back of a white Mercedes-Benz. She has 7 children. She has a husband rotting in a military prison for winning an election. And she has spent the last 3 years fighting publicly, loudly, fearlessly to set him free. As her car slows down near the 7-Up bus stop on Oregon Road in Ikeja, 2 vehicles cut her off. 6 heavily armed men step out, and they open fire. To understand why Kudirat Abiola was murdered, you first need to understand the world she lived in. Born in 1951 in Zaria, northern Nigeria, Kudirat Olayinka Adeyemi grew up to become a businesswoman, a pharmaceutical importer, and the wife of one of Nigeria's most powerful and beloved figures, Chief Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola. MKO Abiola, as he was known, was a billionaire, a philanthropist, and a man the Nigerian people genuinely loved. On June 12, 1993, MKO Abiola ran for president. International observers called it one of the freest and fairest elections Nigeria had ever seen. The results were clear. Abiola had won. Then General Ibrahim Babangida, the military ruler, simply annulled the election. No explanation, no justification, just gone. Nigeria erupted. Protests spread across the country, and MKO Abiola, refusing to stay silent, declared himself the rightful president of Nigeria on June 11, 1994. 12 days later, he was arrested, charged with treason, and thrown into a military prison where he would stay for the rest of his life. With her husband behind bars, Kudirat Abiola made a choice. She could have stayed quiet, stayed safe, protected her children and waited. Instead, she chose to fight. She organized market women, students, oil workers, and civil servants. She rallied the public. She traveled internationally, calling on foreign governments to pressure Nigeria's military rulers. She became the loudest voice demanding the return of her husband's mandate. And in doing so, she made herself the most dangerous kind of enemy, a fearless, public, morally unassailable woman that the government could not easily discredit. So they decided to silence her another way. Kudirat Abiola knew she was being followed. In the months before her death, she told people close to her that unknown men were trailing her movements, watching her home, tracking her routes, and she wasn't wrong. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the threats had already come from the very top. General Sani Abacha, the military dictator who had taken power in late 1993, had reportedly grown furious at Kudirat's refusal to stop campaigning. She was organizing oil strikes. She was speaking on radio stations funded by Western governments to counter military propaganda. She was making noise, and the world was listening. According to testimony that would emerge years later in court, Abacha's chief security officer, a man named Major Hamza Al-Mustapha, was given a contract: kill Kudirat Abiola. And they had already tried, twice. Previous assassination attempts on Nadeko pro-democracy leader Abraham Adesanya and newspaper publisher Alex Ibru had been carried out by the same kill squad. Ibru survived but was seriously wounded. Adesanya escaped. Kudirat would not be so lucky. And the reason she wouldn't was someone sitting right next to her. Lateef Shofolahan had been Kudirat Abiola's trusted personal assistant. He had worked closely with the Abiola campaign. He was an insider, someone Kudirat trusted completely. But according to testimony delivered years later in court, Shofolahan had been turned. He was feeding information to Abacha's kill squad, reporting on Kudirat's movements, her schedule, her routes. On the morning of June 4, 1996, Kudirat was in her white Mercedes-Benz heading to the Canadian High Commission in Lagos. Shofolahan was in the car with her. Her driver, Dauda Atanda, was behind the wheel. As the car approached the 7-Up bus stop on Oregon Road in Ikeja, 2 vehicles suddenly cut them off. 6 armed men stepped out. They opened fire with military-grade weapons. Kudirat Abiola was shot at point-blank range. Her driver, Dauda Atanda, was also shot. Lateef Shofolahan, the personal assistant, was completely unharmed, not a scratch. Kudirat was rushed to Echo Hospital. She died between 12:15 and 12:30 that afternoon. She was 44 years old. The Abacha government's response was almost insulting in its cynicism. They condemned the assassination. They offered a reward of $45,000 for information leading to the killers. They sent a high-powered delegation to the Abiola family to express, quote, heartfelt sympathies. The very government that ordered her murder was now publicly mourning her death. And it worked, for a while. With Abacha still in power, no real investigation was possible. Senior police and military officials denied everything. The trail went cold. MKO Abiola remained in prison. He never learned what truly happened to his wife. And on July 7, 1998, just days before he was reportedly to be released, MKO Abiola himself died in custody. Officially, a heart attack. The circumstances surrounding his death remain disputed to this day. Within weeks, Sani Abacha was also dead, reportedly of a heart attack, though theories abound. With both the accused and the victim of the annulled election now dead, it seemed like the story of June 12 and of Kudirat would be buried forever. It wasn't. When Olusegun Obasanjo became Nigeria's civilian president in 1999, he launched the Oputa Panel, a human rights commission investigating abuses committed under military rule. And that's when a man named Sergeant Barnabas Jabila, known as Sergeant Rogers, walked into a courtroom and confessed. He said he was a member of a North Korean-trained strike force, a secret kill squad operating under the Abacha regime. He said he personally shot Kudirat Abiola. He said the orders came from Major Hamza Al-Mustapha, Abacha's chief security officer. He said the weapons, Uzi rifles fitted with silencers, were provided directly from Al-Mustapha's personal armory. He said Mohammed Abacha, the general's own son, was present when the weapons and cash were distributed to the kill squad. And he said Lateef Shofolahan, Kudirat's personal assistant, had provided the assassins with her movements on the day she died. Another member of the squad, Muhammad Abdul, confirmed the account and testified that Muhammad Abacha personally gave him and other gunmen $10,000 each to flee the country when investigations began. In 2012, after years of legal proceedings, a Lagos High Court convicted Hamza Al-Mustapha and Lateef Shofolahan and sentenced them both to death for the murder of Kudirat Abiola. For a moment, it seemed like justice had finally arrived. Then the appeal court stepped in and set them both free. The appeal court reversed the convictions on procedural grounds. Al-Mustapha walked out of prison in 2013, a free man. And in a twist that many Nigerians found deeply disturbing, he subsequently expressed interest in running for president of the country. The case eventually made its way to Nigeria's Supreme Court, and in early 2025, nearly 30 years after Kudirat was shot dead in her car, the Supreme Court dismissed the case entirely. Not because anyone was found innocent, but because Lagos State, which was responsible for prosecuting the case, had apparently abandoned it through sheer negligence. The Attorney General of Lagos State reportedly claimed ignorance of the case. Ignorance in a murder prosecution of this magnitude. Kudirat Abiola's son, Jamiu, called the state's conduct unjustifiable and deeply painful. And just like that, 30 years of legal battles, confessions, evidence, and testimony ended not with a conviction, but with a filing error. Kudirat Abiola was not a politician. She was a wife, a mother of 7, a businesswoman who simply refused to accept that the votes of millions of Nigerians could be stolen without consequence. For that, she was surveilled, threatened, arrested, and ultimately executed in broad daylight on a busy Lagos road. In 1998, a street corner in New York City was renamed Kudirat Abiola Corner in her honor. Nigeria's democracy, however imperfect, exists in part because of what she sacrificed. And yet, the men believed to have ordered her murder have never spent a single day in prison for it. The confessed shooter served time. The mastermind did not. That is the story of Kudirat Abiola, a woman who was too brave to be ignored and too inconvenient to be allowed to live. This is Africa Unsolved. If this case moved you, share it Someone who needs to hear this story will find it because of you. Subscribe and turn on notifications. A new case drops every Friday. Justice may be delayed, but it must never be forgotten.